fireside chat, where we'll be speaking about the recently approved Economic Sustainability Plan, ESP, of the federal government of Nigeria, and how the public and private sector will collaborate for impact and success. The ESP is the government's official response to cushion the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the Nigerian economy. The ESP prioritizes the digital economy as one of the key sectors that is important to the Nigerian economy. And so there's a specific focus on skills development, infrastructure development, and financial investments. The government is engaging with and will be seeking collaboration with the private sector on these core areas of focus. And so obviously, technology giants like the Facebook team will be part of this collaboration. Today, I have two distinguished leaders here who are so well known, they really need no introduction. It is, however, my honor and privilege to welcome them today. We have with us today the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Oluyemi Oluleke Osinbajo, SAN-GCON. A little bit about His Excellency. He was born in Lagos, is a professor of law and a senior advocate of Nigeria. He is married to Oludolapo Osinbajo, the granddaughter of the late sage and statesman Chief Obafemi Awolowo, and they're blessed with three children. His Excellency's early years in primary school were spent at Corona School, Lagos. Allow me a plug here as a proud Corona parent and alumna. He also attended Igbobi College, Yaba, where he was the winner of multiple awards. Thereafter, he studied at the University of Lagos, and after his one-year professional training at the Nigerian Law School, was admitted to practice as a barrister and solicitor of Nigeria's Supreme Court. He then attended the London School of Economics and Political Science, where he obtained a Master's of Law degree. His Excellency, Mr. Vice President, is an accomplished scholar, teacher, lawyer, administrator, and one of our nation's leading experts on the law of evidence, national and regional corporate commercial laws, and public law. You're very welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have here another distinguished leader, also with experience in the public and private sector, the Vice President of Global Affairs and Communications at Facebook, Mr. Nick Clegg. Mr. Clegg came to Facebook in October of 2018 after 20 years in British and European public life. He spent a decade working in the EU and later as a member of the European Parliament between 1999 and 2004. In 2005, he was elected to the UK Parliament and became leader of Britain's third largest political party, the Liberal Democrats, 2 years later. Following the 2010 election, he led his party into government for the first time since it was founded, establishing Britain's first post-war coalition government and serving as UK Deputy Prime Minister from 2010 to 2015. Following the 2015 general election, he stood down as leader and left Parliament in 2017. His best-selling book, Politics Between the Extremes, is a reflection on his time in government and the place of liberalism in the current political landscape. His second best-selling book, How to Stop Brexit and Make Britain Great Again, set out the case for a rethink of Brexit. Nick Clegg was educated at Westminster School and studied at the University of Cambridge, where my son wants to go, the University of Minnesota, and the College of Europe. He received a knighthood in the 2018 New Year's Honors List in recognition of his political and public service. He currently lives in California with his wife, Miriam, and they have 3 sons. Permit me to address you by your proper title. You're most welcome, Sir Nick Clegg.
Thank you very much. And thanks for reminding me that I wrote a book about how to stop Brexit. That clearly didn't succeed. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Okay, so even though this is a virtual fireside, I must admit, I feel like I'm sitting next to both of you in the presence of greatness. So I must let you know I'm truly honored and privileged to be moderating this fireside chat. We have a lot of questions for both of you, and of course, lots of information that I'm sure everyone watching wants to glean from our speakers today. However, as is always the case, we also do not have an infinite amount of time. And so I'm going to selfishly try to squeeze in as many questions as possible by guiding our speakers in the amount of time we have for each response. I crave your indulgence on this. But who knows, with good timing, perhaps I'll be able to sneak in a bonus question. So we'll get right to it. Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, I'll start with you. So like I said in the intro, the digital economy is a key pillar of the recently approved Economic Sustainability Plan, ESP for short. Can you please speak about the ESP and the digital economy focus? And perhaps also, tell us a bit more about the role of ministries and agencies of government in its implementation. Okay. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thanks a lot, Amwale. I think that just to save time, I take it that everyone sort of understands that our ESP is our response to the economic crisis caused by the pandemic. So our focus on the digital sector is really because practically everything else we're doing centers around expanding our reach in the digital sector. So for example, financial inclusion is critical for us because we are spreading our services, we're extending our services, social services, payments of cash transfers to the poorest and most vulnerable, and all manner of other such payments. We have to make these payments in the farthest flung places in Nigeria. And so we certainly need to expand our reach in order to do so. And of course, of course, technology is critical to that. Secondly, e-commerce, education, and that's been made even, it's been made more important during the lockdowns and all of that, and even now. So all of the e-education platforms that we have, and we're expanding that. Government, of course, is funding a lot of that and collaborating with the private sector to fund and to establish these platforms. And then remote work, practically everything is now remotely done, and we are all engaged in this virtual everything, virtual. And just earlier on today, I did the virtual commissioning of an MSME shared facility in Lagos, sitting right here in my office. So this is getting all very nice and comfortable. And so for us, the digital space is absolutely important, which is why the focus was on the digital economy in the ESP. All ministries, really, practically all of our ministries are involved because this is all of government. It affects everybody, it affects everything. And, but of course, we're led by the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy, which is a ministry fully devoted to all of what we do in the digital space. But practically every ministry is involved. We also have NICTA, which is the agency responsible for information technology. Ministry of Education is, of course, very actively involved. Practically everyone is involved in this. And of course, the private sector. We absolutely can do nothing without the private sector. And practically everything we're doing is to create the environment that would enable the private sector to take leadership and to do what it needs to do to expand the sector. So, so as not to take too much time.
Well said. Well said, sir. So you basically said it. I like to say that the future is digital, distributed, and remote, and that future is now, which is basically what you're saying. And in terms of everyone, it's all hands on deck. And even if they're not, some ministries may not be at the forefront of pushing it, but they will also be impacted and need to get on board. Okay, thank you very much. Still with you, Your Excellency. I think this may be presumptuous of me, but I believe one of the things that probably played a role and culminated in the prioritization of the digital economy in the ESP was your famous Silicon Valley Tech Tour. And so for those who do not know, in 2018, you led a delegation of government agencies, technology ecosystem stakeholders, and investors on a tour of Silicon Valley and Los Angeles. And one of the places your delegation visited was the Facebook campus in Silicon Valley. You also undertook a similar tour of technology companies and startups in Lagos at about the same time. And I know my company, Andela, was one of those you visited. So the question is, have there been any specific gains from these tours over the past 2 years?
Well, there have been several. And I think both tours were extremely successful. In Silicon Valley, Nigerian startup companies got a chance to pitch their products to tech sector investors, so that was very good. In fact, before we left Silicon Valley, one of our venture platforms, one of our venture funds, the venture platform, actually was able to sign a transaction worth about $10 million with the Nigeria-US Council, even before we left. And of course, since then, we've seen tremendous activity. Of course, we were at, as you said, we were at Facebook, the Facebook campus, which was, an absolute delight. We enjoyed being around there and seeing all the excitement and, a great deal of energy out there. It was, I think, particularly encouraging for many of our startups, seeing at close quarters what a comparable giant was doing. And I think that this was very, very helpful. Aside from that, we think that the visits helped in showing our seriousness about the tech sector and also to the entertainment industry also, because we did quite a few meetings also with the entertainment industry. In fact, as of end of 2018, 2019, we got in about $377 million in investments in the tech sector. So that I thought was was excellent. Of course, it still scratches the surface when you consider the size of our economy and the size of the country. But there were very significant gains, and we're extremely happy to have been able to do it. Of course, 2 visits or 1 visit doesn't ever answer the various challenges and issues and all that. So, but I think we started off, a series of interactions which have been very useful, and we continue to engage.
Thank you, sir. So I think we need more of these tours. But not to joke about it, it's interesting to hear the benefits, gained from such tours. And maybe we should make that a KPI. For every tour that people are going on, they should show us the money after, after the tour. But thank you for that. Speaking about investments made by the private sector, Sir Clegg, I'm coming over to you. There's a question that has come up about investment, particularly in infrastructure. I know that the Honorable Minister of Comms will join us at some point in this chat, and I'm sure he will speak to that. However, I must ask you this right now. For a long time, we've heard that tech companies like Facebook don't invest in the infrastructure that enables millions of Nigerians, indeed Africans, to connect to apps like Facebook. Instead, it's believed that it's left to the mobile operators and other internet service providers to fill that infrastructure gap. What do you see as the role of tech companies like Facebook when it comes to broadband infrastructure investments? And does Facebook have any specific plans in this context for Africa and Nigeria? Over to you.
Thank you very much. And I had the opportunity just a little while ago to discuss some of this with the Honourable Minister for Communications. And it's obviously a vital issue for Nigeria, a vital issue for the continent and for the world. Tech companies like Facebook have invested over $300 billion in infrastructure, internet infrastructure from 2014 to 2018. And in the continent of Africa, our investments in open access backhaul fiber in Uganda, South Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and of course Nigeria, are helping millions of people get online for the first time, or of course help existing users access faster, more reliable broadband. I think probably the most ambitious infrastructure project we're involved with currently is the project we call the To Africa submarine cable, which we announced in May of last year, and I was mentioning this to His Excellency, the Vice President and the Minister of Communications a little earlier. Facebook is partnering with 7 other companies to invest in that submarine cable, and it'll land in 16 countries on the continent, including, of course, in Nigeria. And the cable is one of the largest of the world of its kind. It is the first to link both East and West Africa, and it'll bring more subsea capacity than all the cables that currently serve the continent combined. So it really is a transformational infrastructure project, which obviously will be, we hope, of considerable benefits to Nigeria as the continent's most populous country, but also for the continent as a whole. And it'll have a number of impacts. It'll improve, we think, the resiliency of the infrastructure. It'll help to increase 4G coverage and capacity, and hopefully will make the internet in Nigeria and other countries more accessible and affordable to many millions of people. We hope, or fingers crossed, that all goes well, but it's a tremendously ambitious infrastructure project that will become operational in 2024. And we've been really encouraged by the way, picking up a theme you said earlier, of the sort of partnership between the private sector, governments, and others. There are, of course, other infrastructure projects. We were discussing this earlier. There's an infrastructure project in 2 states in Nigeria which we've been involved in, which has involved a $750 million investment on our part in improved broadband. We have projects such as a project called Express Wi-Fi and our edge infrastructure projects, including points of presence in Nigeria and other countries in Africa. And collectively, these are all part of our continued interest in investing, and we will continue to invest in internet infrastructure, because our mission, of course, as you know, is to seek to try and provide services so that people can communicate with each other, with family and friends, and the world can be more connected than it otherwise would be. But of course, those apps and services are redundant if there isn't the infrastructure to carry them, and that's why it's something which I hope is good for the world as well. But it's also, candidly, in Facebook's self-interest to make sure that the infrastructure is significantly improved. So I hope that's a helpful thumbnail sketch of some of the things we're doing.
Very helpful, transformational, ambitious, but thank you for re-emphasizing the commitment and willingness of the private sector to invest, in the digital economy in furtherance of our implementation of the ESP. Let me, still with you, Sir Clegg, let me quickly move, since you've answered that so well, let me quickly move to another question that a lot of people have debated about as we operate more and more in the digital economy. It is about the use of data. Now, this controversy has been around for quite some time now. However, COVID-19 the pandemic has now brought it to the fore, the challenges of balancing the use of data, in this case, to protect public health, balancing that with an individual's right to privacy. So in what way has Facebook contributed to demonstrating how to address this challenge?
Thank you. It's such an important question that one of the things I've grappled with, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a data scientist, I come from a background of politics and public service. And one of the things that I think interests me enormously is how, exactly as you described, in view of the totally legitimate and in many ways increasing concern about data privacy, data use, how is data gathered, stored, monetized, and so on. And that, I think, quite rightly, has led to a lot of regulatory and policy reflexes to protect people's privacy, to lock down data and so on, that we mustn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is also considerable societal and public value in using data at scale in a responsible and privacy protective way. And we at Facebook have developed a program we call Data for Good, and it's really trying to strike that right balance by making, at an aggregated, privacy protected and anonymized basis, to make data available for societal challenges. Because previously, due to privacy concerns, we only ever shared data with trusted partners like academics and humanitarian organizations, and we didn't share it more widely. But since then, we've applied a number of ingenious ways in order to be able to share bigger and bigger data sets on an anonymized, privacy protected way. So for instance, we have, most especially, by the way, I think this has been helpful in the pandemic that the world is struggling with now. We've produced 3 new disease prevention maps or prevention map tools. So for instance, we have data sets which are basically co-location maps, and they help researchers to better understand the movement of the disease as people talk about the disease on social media. So it's an extremely powerful planning tool. There's epidemiologists and others are trying to understand where the disease is going to go next. We have movement range maps which show at a high level, so not at a, so no individual data is being exposed at a county or a regional level where populations are staying in one part of town or whether populations are visiting other parts of town. And then we have a third tool, which is a sort of evolution on that, which is called a social connectedness index. And that shares the likelihood of friendships across states and countries to see whether, because that as well helps with disease modeling, because it helps to, because friendship connections are often a vector by which the disease is communicated. And our Data for Good website contains maps for 169 countries globally, including obviously many in the continent of Africa. And for the COVID-19 response, we're generating daily insights on population mobility for 40 countries and nearly 50 cities and states around the world. And of course, in Nigeria, for instance, the movement range map that I talked about earlier is publicly available. I've been very involved in this, and some of the sort of teams work under the part of the company for which I'm responsible. And I've really been so excited over the last several months how we've really, I think, transformed the partnership with academics and researchers and public authorities. For instance, we work with the University of Maryland and other universities to introduce basically a questionnaire on Facebook, which of course, because of Facebook's reach, can be done at enormous scale, so that people literally just put through the questionnaire. It's very light questions, just a very quick response. Do you have any symptoms? Have you had any symptoms? And that again provides such a granular level of detail for governments around the world dealing with this terrible, terrible problem.
Thank you, sir. I like how you started. Don't throw the baby away with the birth water. And so it's basically about finding a balance. Yeah. How do we make this data available publicly but anonymized so that we can use it? Well, it's good to know that Facebook is doing its part to ensure that some of these tricky aspects of the digital economy are to some extent being looked into. Thank you for that. As His Excellency earlier said, the success of the ESP, in this case, the digital economy, is going to rely on a healthy collaboration between the government and the private sector, tech companies in particular. So we expect that the government will do certain things while the private sector also handles certain things. Talking about the private sector executing on some of the focus areas earlier mentioned, so skills, infrastructure, finance, I'd like us to speak a bit more about how easy it is to do that in Nigeria. And so, Your Excellency, this one's for you. Nigeria was recently applauded for its rise on the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business rankings. This has been credited largely to the efforts of the government through the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC. But a lot of businesses in technology and the creative industry still complain about facing difficulties in many areas. So for instance, recent regulations by the Nigeria Broadcasting Corporation are seen as anti-competition and a discouragement to investors in the industry. So how will the government work to fix these issues and then, and manage the peculiarities of the technology and the creative industries? Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. I think that first, with regulation, we're dealing with uncharted territory, because quite a few of what we're seeing are entirely new. And I must say that the regulatory authorities have done quite a decent work of trying to grapple with the newness of some of what they're seeing. So for example, we worked on the payment services licenses. There are licenses for fintech companies that are obviously because they're doing some banking type work, but they are not deposit banks. They're not licensed deposit banks. So we have to create some room for them. And what has happened is that a collaborative effort of government and the tech sector worked on this. Even the entertainment sector worked on this. We had a technology and creativity advisory group. And these are, young entrepreneurs, innovators, etc., who worked with us in the Industrial and Competitiveness Council to craft some of these regulations and to think through some of the problems. So that license was particularly important because it carved space for space that was previously dominated entirely by deposit money banks. And of course, you know that they are the least willing to have their lunch taken away from them. So really, this was quite good. And also, there have been other ways in which, obviously, by way of access to credit, we've worked very hard to ensure that there is some access to credit for innovators. We've talked a bit about foreign investments in innovation in Nigeria. But more importantly, the work that the Bank of Industry is doing. The Bank of Industry has a fund, a tech fund. The central bank has also recently established a technology fund. And the AFDB, we're working with the AFDB. They have a $500 million fund, which we're at the moment, we're I think at the final stages of trying to bring that into existence. So there's quite a bit of activity around trying to ensure that there is access to funding while we're improving the business environment and improving the environment for tech companies to operate. I think that one thing that's certain is that there's change in the technology space is so rapid that you frequently find that the regulator is really just chasing after the innovations and all of that to see how best to regulate without stifling these companies. Regulation 9, the MBC code, which you referred to, is one which obviously is now, well, there's activity around trying to take a second look at it. There are those who say that it is anti-competitive, is an anti-competition. There are those who say that it is pro-competition, by the way. So it's one which I think we should take a second look at. Basically, what it says, as you know, is that if you have a product, a licensed product for TV or film and all of that, you're expected to share it with other platforms. It's one which, and I understand the argument of those who say that that this is a violation of copyright and intellectual property in other ways, etc., which is a very strong point, and this is why I think that we ought to take a second look at it and see whether there are ways of moderating that to be more acceptable, and so as not to stifle the work of very, very hardworking, creative people who are creating content in film, creating content in music, etc. So that's where we are.
Thank you. I want to particularly thank you for that. I mean, for committing to take a second look and to see where there are valid points. And we look forward to traction, not just on that, but on everything. And I guess one of the things you said, which is important, and I guess we should say this to the public, is we are really in uncharted territories. And so we should expect, or we should show some patience, and we should understand that we will have some teething issues. So we all have to work together. So thank you very much, sir, for that. And speaking about tech companies and the private sector, we are seeing top global players in the technology industry showing a lot more interest in Nigeria and Africa recently. So the likes of Facebook are increasing their investments, just like Sir Clegg said, and presence on the continent. What is the government doing to ensure that the business environment is ready to receive them, especially when we look at the human resource and skills required at the right skill. Secondly, it is important that Nigerian players are not swallowed by these giant companies. So how are we ensuring that these two core issues are not overlooked?
Right. Okay. I think that first we are trying to work with practically everyone who is interested in the Nigerian digital sector. By way of preparation, one of the critical issues for us is, of course, our broadband infrastructure, improving our broadband infrastructure. And we've heard the very exciting stuff that Facebook is doing, especially by way of the subsea cable that is being launched. But we are also working, we have a Nigerian National Broadband Plan 2020 to 2025, recently launched by the Honorable Minister for Communications and Digital Economy. There's a presidential committee which has just been inaugurated to work on this. But the basic objective is to deliver data download speeds of at a minimum of 25, at least 25 megabits per second for urban areas, and about 10 megabits per second for rural areas. So it's, and of course, we're trying to cover about 90% of our population as well in terms of just the reach. So these are broad objectives. And for us, creating that infrastructure is crucial, because really that's how everybody else will be able to operate. And we're happy to have, to see the partnerships that we're getting from Facebook and from some of the other tech companies. In addition to that, the state governments are working on ensuring that it is cheap to lay broadband networks. Of course, we're a federation, which means that the states have, considerable autonomy, especially regarding development control, etc. So if you're going to lay cables in a state, obviously, they may want to charge and all that. But at the National Economic Council, which is a meeting of all the state governors, which I have the privilege of chairing every month, we've agreed that states will not charge more than 145 naira per meter. That will be the right-of-way charge. But we've gone beyond that, and several states have gone beyond that to say we're not even going to charge anything at all, because obviously it makes more sense to have the broadband infrastructure laid than whatever little internally generated revenue that they can make. So we're at a point where many of the states are saying, let's
All right. Welcome back. So, Your Excellency, you were just you were still speaking about.
I'd actually finished.
You had finished. Okay. So I'm going to switch. I just found out the Honorable Minister of Communications was supposed to join us, but I believe he has spoken earlier. So we have the Executive Secretary and CEO of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council, Ms. Yewande Sadiku, who's supposed to pop in because she has a question. Do we have her? Is she ready to join us? Okay. If she's not, I'm going to try and see if I can sneak in a bonus question here. All right. So.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Good afternoon.
Yes,
can you hear me? Fantastic.
Yes, we can.
This is Yewande. This is Yewande.
Okay, so I was.
All right.
Welcome. I was just welcoming you, but I know that you have a question. So just like I said, for our viewers, Yewande is the CEO of the Nigerian Investments Promotion Council. You're welcome, madam. I know you have a question, so please let's get right to it. Ms. Sadiku,
thank you. Your Excellency, Sir Clegg, thank you for this privilege. Sir Clegg mentioned when he was speaking about Nigeria being having the largest population on the continent. I'd like to say that Nigeria doesn't just have the largest population, it has the most innovative, the most entrepreneurial, and the most ingenious market. And for Facebook, we consider Nigeria to be one of the countries where there should be a deliberate investment for strategic reasons in developing the entire spectrum of the value chain of the digital ecosystem. So it's everything for me, from digital access infrastructure to end user apps. And it would be interesting to hear about Facebook plans for increased investment in deliberately unlocking the potential that the Nigerian market represents. Over.
Yes, thanks. And by the way, I should correct myself. I think I said earlier when I was referring to investment we've made in the states of Edo and Ogun states. I think I mentioned that that Facebook had made a financial investment of a certain number. What I meant to say was that we've invested in more than 750 kilometers of fiber in those two states. I think I said $750 million. I meant 750 kilometers. I shouldn't get my dollars and my kilometers mixed up. So that's just clarity that the investment, which in a sense is much more important, what it translates to in physical practice, and that's leading to 750 kilometers of fiber. And it was a really successful. It's been a really successful project on our part, and we've partnered with Main One, and we've learned so much on how to build at speed and the impact that you as policymakers can have in reducing or removing fees or for rights of way, which was an issue. And I know that our teams are very keen to invest again if the legislative and regulatory hurdles, which have emerged previously in other states, can be removed. And as I think some of us managed to discuss amongst ourselves earlier, the fact that you have set out this national broadband plan with these clear ambitions to boost broadband penetration over the next 5 years, that really helps investors like Facebook, because it gives us certainty and clarity on your ambitions. In answer to your question about the investment in people, which I think was your question as much as in infrastructure, because as you say, Nigeria has this fantastic entrepreneurial heritage and culture, and has got some of the most gifted entrepreneurs in the digital space. Really, compared to many other countries, this is something that we definitely want to play our role in, and we run a number of programs. The Facebook Start Accelerator program is a mentorship program to help startups and students who are interested in building solutions using advanced technology, particularly with a focus on AI and machine learning. We have some bespoke training programs for small and medium-sized businesses called Boost Your Business. We do some training workshops particularly for female entrepreneurs in Nigeria under the At She Means Business program. We have an intensive 2-month program as well of support for 20 to 30 aspiring digital professionals in Nigeria. And we are constantly keen to hear from you and other policymakers and leaders on where you think we should direct our efforts. So I think, if I understood what you were quite rightly asking about, is investment isn't just in infrastructure, it's also in skills, in people, in know-how, in giving people the confidence to innovate themselves. And as I said earlier, and as I often say, Facebook's a business. So what we do, we obviously want to do things which we think are good for the world, but we also want to do things which we I think are good for our business. And I think it's important that people understand when altruism and self-interest align, and I think they do in this case, because the lifeblood of Facebook is a vibrant, innovative economy with people who not only rejoice in their private lives online, but also build businesses online. Small and medium-sized businesses are the lifeblood of the way Facebook operates. We have millions and millions of small and medium-sized businesses, not least in Nigeria, who reach their customers and grow and employ more people through our platform. So the more we can do to boost innovation and entrepreneurship, particularly amongst small and medium-sized businesses, the better, we hope, for Nigeria, but also the better for Facebook too. So I like to think that all of our interests are aligned, which is a good thing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ms. Saduku, for joining and asking that question. So altruism and self-interest, where they align is the answer. Okay, we are out of time, and so I didn't get my wish to sneak in my bonus question, but we must respect time. So we're just going to round up what I would like, and I would like you to do, starting with Sir Nick Clegg, if you could just give some final words. So I 60 seconds. I need you to give us powerful words as to your final thoughts on this whole discussion in 60 seconds.
I can do it in less than 60 seconds, which is an extraordinary and uncharacteristic achievement for a former politician. But I just really want to say how excited I am on behalf of the whole of Facebook and all of our teams for what, the emerging ambition that we see in the broadband space in Nigeria, particularly with the ESP led by His Excellency the Vice President. And what a huge pleasure it's been for me to hear from the Vice President directly about those ambitions. And I hope you've heard from us how much we want to play a role in ensuring that Nigeria fulfills all those internet and online ambitions today and in the future. There you go. That's less than 60 seconds.
I was looking at my timer. You did it. Thank you.
I did. I thought I did.
So, Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, so from you as well, 60 seconds, your final thoughts on all of this. We'd like to hear from you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just want to say how fantastic this afternoon has been. I am extremely excited. I wish this news of Facebook opening his office had come just before the elections. It would have improved our chances tremendously with young people and entrepreneurs and business. But this is all very good, and we're so excited to hear all of what is possible and all of what is being done already. So and I think that this partnership is one that we must continue to nurture and make sure that it benefits people and of course benefits Facebook itself. And we're looking forward to working with your team, with the Facebook team at all times, and where our doors are open. We're looking forward to that interaction as much as we can. And we hope that this will be the beginning of even more conversations and more action too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sirs. This is why you're distinguished leaders. They both kept to time, astute. Thanks to all our viewers and to everyone who's joined. It's been good. We've heard highlights. I wish we could go on, but with respect, just to wrap it up, with respect to implementing the ESP with focus on digital economy, we have seen and heard a willingness from both the public and private sector, both represented here today, and not just a willingness, but the commitment to invest in the 3 focus areas, and lastly, a determination to execute for results in a way that ensures that the digital economy we have envisaged becomes a successful, thriving reality. That's all the time we have today. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Ah, la, 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 la,